Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We'll combine them. I've had a chance to talk with some of you over the last day, and it's been fascinating to hear about the different applications of Qt. Of course, there are a number of media properties, but also there are things as diverse as designing for car parts all the way to medical applications. So I hope that this will help in some way to provide some perspective on how CNN looks at the world. I also was trying to think about Munich. It's such an amazing city, and I just yesterday I took the train, the S-Bahn, into the city, and it occurred to me that development frameworks, including Qt, are in some ways like an excellent train system. They let you go around, and in the case of Munich, you can go to the Marienplatz, you can go to the Deutsches Museum, you can go as far south as Wolfratshausen, down towards the mountains, and you can go up to the airport and then fly basically anywhere you want to go. So in that sense, when you're standing on the platform here at Unterschleißheim, and it's 5 degrees Celsius, and you have on maybe a sweater and then a jacket and possibly a hat, and you've just bought your ticket, the question is, how do you want to use that ticket? Where do you want to go? And I'd like to share with you a little bit about how CNN looks at this question. So first, the presentation also is divided into 3 sections. How mobile is changing society, and this is far beyond CNN alone. Next, how mobile is changing CNN. And lastly, how innovation helps us to keep pace. I realize that some of the people in the audience here are focused on other platforms, including desktops. In addition to that, some of you are focused on mobile, and some do all. And I do want to make the point in advance that we think of reaching the mobile audience as part of an overall strategy of reaching consumers wherever they are, on TV, on PC, inclusive of laptops, on tablets, and on phones. So first, as we think about mobile changing society, I have 3 different images here, more or less in chronological order. The phone has just started to change the way people interact in the last 10 years, really, especially with the advent of SMS and now with the use of camera phones. And in the United States, a presidential election is a huge event. You don't know what's coming along, and anyone who wins the election has gone through many challenges. In 2008, Barack Obama won the election, and he overcame odds that some people said he never could. And when he showed up at the inauguration, it was an uplifting event for many people. But if you look at the bottom third of the screen, what do we see? This is a personal event for so many people who attended. Everyone has these devices in their pockets. This is something that all of those people who had those devices will remember forever. Next, how about this one? This is the lower half of the screen across the Atlantic, here closer to Munich, and just a huge event earlier this spring with the royal wedding. Again, an uplifting event, and people wanted to be part of it. And again, if we look at the Arab Spring, which is extended into the Arab Year in many respects, phones not only have captured the event, but they've helped to propel events in certain ways, and CNN has been there throughout. One of the ways that we look at the world is that we want to bring the story to consumers wherever they are, and this is an important part of it. So, mobile is changing society, but how? What is the penetration in terms of news consumption? We see that people access content 91% via TV, 71% via print, 90% via mobile in terms of the ability to do this. Computer 74%, all the way down to the tablet, 5% of the population. I talked with our research team. It's very difficult to get these statistics evenly spread around the world, so these happen to be from the United Kingdom. They will not be the same in every country, but this is representative of a number of countries around the world. Next, we're living a paradox today, and it has to do with a combination of convergence and divergence. And in the media world, this has profound implications. And I don't know how many of you in this room have experienced this, but I have conversations with dozens of people on the topic of how our platforms interact. What does it mean to have TVs, PCs, tablets, and phones? And actually, especially when TV is the legacy for us. CNN started about 30 years ago, and it was a TV product. And when the online web came along, all of a sudden, everybody was saying, hey, wait a minute, there's this little thing over on the side, but our real business is TV. Now, fast forward a few years, and all of a sudden you have phones. And phones are the smaller platform. And the internet, the online internet, is the real web, so to speak. And yet, when we see the growth of applications, all of a sudden the applications become a primary way for consumers to access content. And so you have the convergence where we think about consumers across the platforms, but at the same time, divergence, how we think about each one. I have a few cardinal rules of doing business in the digital space, and one of them is always start with the assumption that each platform is different, and then work backwards into the similarities instead of the other way around. Some of the biggest mistakes that I've made are when we've assumed that a mobile phone is just a small screen for the online web. A few years ago, I was working on a video product, and we tried to deploy the same video product. It happened to have a lot of graphics. This was for a weather application on a phone. And we realized that people couldn't read the maps and couldn't read the text. And so we created another way to deploy with simpler maps and larger text, and all of a sudden the consumers were very pleased. That was both a successful product launch and a lucrative one for us, and it's the sort of thing we need to be thinking about quite a lot. That will be no surprise to many of you who think across the platforms. However, there's a second rule related to this, and that is build first for the consumer and second for efficiency. Because the people who are really interested in convergence of saying, hey, there's a PC and there's a phone, they may look at it and say, hey, you know what? We can put it all on the same infrastructure. We can build the same way and just scale up or down. And that's not the way it works if we want to have a first-rate business. And I would submit to you that that's as true for business to business as it is for business to consumer. And so we see emergence of equally powerful devices requires products tailored for each one. And I'll talk in a minute about the applications at CNN. Okay. So just in wrapping up this section, the key thing that I try to share with our team at CNN, it comes down to a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald from some time ago. The test of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. That's true in a lot of parts of our lives. I'm sure you can think of a few. But it's particularly true in this case. We simultaneously must think, in the case of a media business, it could be the BBC, it could be a sports network, it could be entertainment. Simultaneously think about the consumer across all the platforms when we think of the divergence and excellence in each one. I'll give you a quick example of this. Imagine, if you will, when a breaking news alert comes through. Breaking news alert comes through. Now we have millions of people around the world who have our applications, and the alert pops up. Many of those people will then go to see what happened on their phone. But if they're at home and they can see it on the news, whether it's the royal wedding or news from Egypt or Tunisia or the All Blacks just winning in New Zealand, you can turn on the TV. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how mobile is changing CNN. It starts inside. Let's see if I can click it here. In the newsroom. If you look carefully at this image, what you'll see is that there are devices all around the table. When we're covering the news, spot on, minute in and minute out, hour in and hour out, you'll see our primary talent, in fact, talent across the board, using these devices to stay tuned and deliver the most updated information. On the other hand, you also see it in the field. This is Soledad O'Brien covering the earthquake in Haiti. And you can see her with her phone. I had a chance to talk with Soledad last year about this, and she said not only did she file reports from the field on her phone, but also this is the way she stayed in touch with her family. The phone links the landline phone links were down. It was difficult finding other ways to communicate, but with her phone she could do it. So it's both a personal and a business device for the people who make CNN go on screen. In addition to that, we have a product called iReport. Some of you will have heard about it, I would expect. And this is basically a citizen journalism application. This enables consumers to see an event, take a picture or a video, and then upload that to our iReport community. In addition to having a community for iReport, and by the way, that's a section on our Qt developed Symbian app. In addition to having that, we look at the submissions, and then if we vet them using the standard CNN vetting process, then these reports can go on air. Think of the Japanese tsunami earlier this year. Happened suddenly. We didn't have a camera crew on site in Fukushima and nearby places, but we got iReports. We were able to vet those reports and then put them on air very quickly so people around the world knew what was happening. It's extremely powerful. Let's see, I'll do another click. So I wanted to share a little bit about the reach of CNN, and back to the point about kind of global metrics being a little hard to come by. We have a much easier time finding single country metrics today, although that's changing as the mobile marketplace evolves. These statistics are from the United States alone. Just to give you a sense of the scale of CNN, you'll see that the CNN digital network reaches over 20 million people today. This is up by a factor of 2 over just a couple of years, and so it's growing very rapidly. You can see some other companies as well. My belief is that most people are going to access content from at least 2 or 3 news sites. It might be CNN, it might be the BBC, it might be the New York Times, it might be a smaller specialist publication. The goal for CNN is to earn consumer loyalty by having the stories that a person wants to read, and so that we are one of the sources of news, not the only source of news, but one of the sources of news for people like you in this room every day because of the way we deploy the content and the way we build our products. This is a chart showing our overall app portfolio today. And by the way, it's changing rapidly, but as you can see, we have a large presence in the US and Asia, and a significant presence in Europe too. Actually, Europe is sizable, but simply because of the breadth of our installed base in South Korea, it makes others look small by comparison. I was interested yesterday afternoon to be out in the hallway and to take a look at the proliferation of Symbian devices. It's interesting that China and India and some other countries are the largest ones there. And I think as the Symbian devices roll out further, we'll see increases in China and India in part and specifically because of the Symbian device growth. And so the point that we have is, and taking a cue from Marco's presentation this morning, connecting to the next billion. How does CNN stay relevant, become relevant, stay relevant, become better, and it's through an evolving ecosystem of constant learning. Let's see. We'll see. There we go. So I thought you might like to see an update on the news cycle and how we see app downloads. And you can see that when there are large events, masses of people around the world want to tune in, and CNN is a brand that many people are familiar with and trust, and so they will come to us. We also have various efforts to make our apps easily available to find people who have not seen CNN before. We have a very sticky application. Once people start to use the CNN application, it tends to be used at least weekly, often daily. And so you can see the big news events, but also as people buy devices, as people find a specific need, they'll download the app as well. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that we have various operating systems represented. One of the things that I would point out is we just launched our Nokia application in May of this year. It's a new application, and it's just rolling out. It's been fascinating to see the growth. 14 million total downloads. This is complementary to the mobile web penetration. One of the things that I point out, I was actually talking with someone yesterday afternoon about Qt and the application for mobile web as well as apps. We believe that first-rate media organizations will not choose between downloads or apps and also mobile web. That rather, each major media organization will have a great mobile website complemented by apps and vice versa. The goal is to serve people in a way that they choose to consume content. Some of them prefer the apps and will go in there and frankly, apps tend to have more usage per user per month than the mobile web. But on the other hand, mobile web, as you all know, is build once, serve many, and it's very good for people who are browsing. So we try to do both. Furthermore, we use the mobile web to drive people to adopt apps, and that's a very effective ecosystem. Let's see. Okay, then here we see that mobile is actually growing faster than online. That won't be a surprise to too many people. We do think that over time we'll have more mobile page views than online page views. We're far from that today, however. Online is growing at about 23%, and mobile is growing at about 40% year over year. And innovation is critically important. Here you can see a lineup of phones with apps displayed. And then I'd like to show you a little video that talks about how we're working with Nokia. And here we go.
We have launched the new Nokia App.
It will allow users to instantly upload iReports.
Great pictures, great content.
And video as well.
Video as well.
So I'll cut it there just so that we can have more time for conversation. What you saw there was essentially a full meal of news. And so you can get the core breaking news worldwide, but there's also technology news, entertainment news, sporting news. In addition to that, iReport was mentioned. Literally just this morning, I was actually walking on the treadmill this morning and just flipping through the app on an E7. And there was news from Tunisia about the elections, news from New Zealand about the All Blacks, news from various cities about the Occupy movement. All of these right in your fingertips. That's the sort of service that we strive to provide in a very humble way as we try to innovate constantly. And so the net is with Qt, using innovative technology, thinking about a global approach. For many people, CNN is synonymous with global reach for news. We strive to do a great job with that every day with hundreds and hundreds of people, and we value our relationship with Nokia and with Qt, which has enabled us to develop a first-rate application. As we're wrapping up here, one of the things that I just want to share with you is what we believe, what CNN believes, because it goes deeper than just the news. It goes deeper than the business model. We are a very healthy company, which enables us to invest in mobile. But what is it that we stand for? CNN stands for integrity. To the best of our ability, we want to produce some of the best that journalism has to offer. And especially in a kind of tumultuous time for news, print, and other places, we want to show the world one example of how to connect individuals, connect groups through the news, through high journalistic integrity. The next is respect. Respect for people around the world, no matter where they are, and to try to give a holistic view that shares both sides while also being something that is engaging to consume. We don't want to be the kind of eat your spinach sort of application. You know, it's good for you, but you don't really enjoy it. We want to have a combination of things so that each time when you finish using the app, you're like, wow, I'm glad I did that. And the last one that I would point to is courage. And this year has been a particular time for it. There's been an incredible amount of breaking news this year from Egypt and other parts of the Middle East, Libya most recently, to Japan, to the United States, to Greece, and you can go on and on and on. And we intend to be in the middle of the stories, covering those stories through a combination of our reporters and also through our iReport offerings to make sure that we do our best to share what's going on around the world. And with that, I think it is about time for questions, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have some time for questions. I see one over there.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for an enlightening presentation. My question relates to tablets. You specifically name tablets as an element of your strategy, and it obviously figures prominently in your app download data. Yet, at least your penetration data from the UK shows only 5% of the people being able to consume applications on a tablet. Could you comment on what qualities of the tablet platform have created the importance in your strategy?
I would be happy to do that. It's something that is much discussed these days. I'm sure that it's discussed among many of you here. First of all, we are talking with lots of people to understand how best to deploy on a tablet. We believe that there's an emerging consensus that a tablet use is different than phone use and from PC use. A tablet has a touch screen, unlike a PC. It has location, unlike a PC, but it has a screen that's typically about 10 inches. Some of them are 7, so let's say it's generally 7 to 10 inches. We believe that tablets are a much more immersive experience than phones, and our data shows that. And so, for example, many people on phones, and we'll take just kind of a broad average here, many people on phones are having what we think of as a snacking experience. They go in, pick 2, 3, 4, 5 stories, maybe they're just waiting in line at the checkout or something like that, and then they turn it off. On the other hand, with tablets, many people are sitting in an airport lounge for 20 minutes, or sitting at home on the sofa while they're watching TV, and they will go deep into the stories. We see quite a few stories per user per session. And so what we're trying to do then is to design applications that make it easier to have a lean back experience for the tablet, as opposed to more of a lean forward, quick snacking experience for the phones. And last but far from least, the tablets typically have brilliant screens. And so we use rich imagery and video. It's a great experience, and furthermore, many people are connected via Wi-Fi, so the download speed tends to be faster than many mobile phone experiences. Does that help with the question? Great.
Hello.
Hello.
Though this is a developer conference, could you elaborate a bit on how you see mobile changing the business model that you have? You didn't that much touch that in your presentation, but there must be quite good opportunities to turn it into money for you, I guess.
That's right, and it requires both great products and also some amount of patience, but we're finding a rapid ramp in the revenue. So let's talk a little bit about the traditional business model of a TV organization. For a company like CNN, often we receive distribution fees for video on TV. In addition to that, we have advertising, and so generally there will be 2 revenue streams there. When we first started with our downloadable applications on phones, we charged in the US. And we decided that actually a free business model with ad support would be better because it would enable us to reach a wider audience. And so as a result, going forward, all of our mobile application will be monetized through advertising. So that raises the next kind of big bucket of questions, which is how to do that in a way that's consumer friendly. And so what we've done is taken inordinate time to design our application so it's easy to get to the content, The ads are displayed in a way that are impactful, but yet somewhat subtle. So if you look at our applications, you'll see 3 or 4 stories, and then you'll see a line with an ad, and then you'll go down some more stories, and then an ad, so that our advertisers are happy, but also consumers can get right to the content they want with rich images. And then in terms of the trajectory, mobile right now from a revenue standpoint is the fastest growing business in CNN. We now have, I think, 3 years of triple-digit growth. Next year, I expect to be another one, although I don't want to speculate too much until we see it happen. And so what we'll see is tremendous growth from the ads. And so my standpoint from a business perspective is this is not a marketing initiative. This is a way to generate revenue for CNN so that we can reinvest in the business worldwide, and it's turning out to be very successful. We do need a few things. One of them is better metrics. The metrics on mobile phones can be a little challenging today, and so we're working hard on that along with industry groups. And next, the advertising industry still is more comfortable with TV and also with online than for mobile, except for probably about, I would describe, 10 to 20% of the leading companies, and the 10 to 20% of leading companies who are aggressively advertising in mobile are seeing disproportionate returns, and so they're our best customers, and they come back over and over.
Hi.
Hi.
One of my interests is, well, besides mobile and development, is online privacy. And I was wondering, especially related to advertising, what were some of your challenges in ensuring that your users have a reasonable degree of privacy? And what are some of your recommendations so that you can make money from ads, but also you protect your users?
Right. So with the question about privacy, I've been personally involved in this both at an enterprise level within CNN and also in the industry for years now. And my point of view is that it's our responsibility as an industry to get this one right. And I actually think we have an opportunity to do it better than online did because it has some similarities there. The first thing is, well, there's an overarching principle, which is that privacy is a right of consumers. And that's my perspective, and that's CNN's perspective. And then there's a process of opting in for information that would be deemed, private information. The opposite statement of that is, don't underestimate consumers' desire to retain their privacy. Make sure that we think through every step of that. And so, for example, with ads, we have no personally identifiable information unless a consumer has opted in for some location. Now, not every single company in the world does that, but that's our approach, and we think that that's the right approach. Furthermore, once you go deeper, let's take the ads, for example. We don't think that there should be pop-ups on the screen. We think that there should be an election by a consumer if they want to see a bigger ad. So you'll see very interesting ad units, but only if the consumer elects to open them up. An example of that was Audi recently. We just had, and this, I think this was limited to the United States for the past month. Every Sunday, Audi bought all of our mobile products across platform. It was a beautiful ad unit if you like those things. And by the way, I'm a consumer first. And so I'm not the biggest fan of every single ad. I expect companies to do a great job at the creative and give me something that I want to know. But in that particular case, I'm interested in cars, I'm interested in learning, and that ad unit provided both. So I would go even beyond your point about privacy, although there are hours and hours of focus groups and hours of industry debates about how best to do this, and say also, even beyond what I consider to be the nuts and bolts of privacy, it's also not only desirable, but arguably an obligation of advertisers to do a great job with the creative. And one last thing that I would add in is that anyone who's advertising on a mobile device ought to think about having a great destination, whether that is a microsite or a mobile website or something that is mobile optimized, because I consider it to be disrespectful of consumers on mobile phones if we take them from a mobile optimized experience and send them to a PC optimized experience. So I'm taking your question a little bit and then going a bit further. But the net of it is the consumer experience must come first, and privacy is a core expectation of consumers that we must respect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Time is up.